Blog Talk Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Bites for Kids from the National Writing for Children Center at www.writingforchildrencenter.com. This is Suzanne Lorance, your host, and gosh, my guest today is Kerin Adams, and she hasn't shown up yet, so I don't know if we got our wires crossed or what, but I do remember emailing her and booking the show with her, and then I sent her questions ahead of time and the time of the show and all that, so maybe she'll show up in a minute. I always worry that something has happened to the guest when they don't show up for the time that we have scheduled. But anyway, the name of Kerin's book, it's ADHD Success, Solutions for Boosting Self-Esteem, The Diary Method, ages 7 through 17. And this is just one of several books this month that we are showcasing that come from Loving Healing Press. And we're even going to talk to the publisher himself this week of Loving Healing Press. So I was anxious to talk to her today about this book because it's a kind of a diary-type workbook thing and just a great resource for parents and counselors and teachers to have with students or their own children who, have ADDH issues, that kind of thing. So I want to give you her website where you can find out a little bit more about the book and you can find out more about her. And if we don't have her on today, if something's happened, then we'll see about rescheduling her later this month for the show. But for right now, you can just go to her site. It's called Reach Beyond ADD LLC. So you just type in www.reachbeyondadd.com. And you'll see all the information there about her background in teaching and counseling and coaching and all those kinds of things, and then also information about this book. And I was really interested to hear more about her coaching, how she coaches people with ADD. Hey, maybe this is her. Let's see if this is her.
This is her, Kerin Adams. This is she.
Hi, Kerin.
How are you?
I'm fine. It's Suzanne. I didn't know if you were going to make it or not. Okay, well, we're on the air. Okay, we are on the air, so we are ready to go. Well, that's good. I was just directing listeners to your website at reachbeyondadd.com.
Capital ADD, capital ADD.
Yeah, but they'll get it either way. Even if they just type reachbeyondadd.com, they're going to get it. They'll get to the site. So anyway, that's the site. And you've got this new book out, which is called ADHD Success, Solutions for Boosting Self-Esteem, The Diary Method, ages 7 through 17. So I've been reading the book and just thinking, gosh, I wish I'd had this when my son was 7 to 17. He's now 30 years old, but this diary would have been great. So tell us a little bit about the book and how you came up with this.
I'm a former teacher, paraprofessional for children with ADD and other disabilities, and I was so successful during that time at a public school that I was very motivated to put down in writing the experiences that I had and then some. I also became a coach for families and children on ADHD issues about 8 years ago, and that also helped to prompt the writing of the book. My father was a very famous psychoanalyst / pioneer in adult ADD, and at the very beginning of my career, around 8 years ago, I read one of his 36 books on ADD, and that started the whole ball rolling. So that's basically it. And the book has been used by many parents, and now it's being used in schools as well for kids with ADHD. And it's a universal book in terms of the prompts on the diary pages, in terms of, what did they do right today that they can feel good about themselves. And then the diary pages specifically say, I raised my hand instead of screaming out the answer, and I asked someone to please hand me something instead of give me, and things of that nature, so that they can start to realize, what they do right without even being aware of it, which will hopefully give them motivation to work on the challenging areas that they deal with every day.
Yeah, because in addition, I mean, the book, it says so in the title, Solutions for Boosting Self-Esteem, but it's kind of providing them with some tips for, more appropriate behavior, too. And then when they read the prompt here and see, for example, here's a diary page. It says, and this is just a home situation, but it says, did you manage to do any of these things today? 1, and they just check any that apply. I woke up when the alarm went off without going back to sleep. I quickly made my bed before going out of my room, or I cleaned up part of my room. And then today I'm especially proud of myself because. So, that's just kind of nice to know that they can just follow this book and see some of these things themselves. And like you said, it's going to boost their self-esteem because we all feel better when we've done things, right, and not being yelled at for not doing them the way we should have maybe. But also it just kind of provides them some guidelines for what they need to be watching in terms of the way they're doing things too.
Absolutely. They'll become much more self-aware of their own barometer, self-esteem barometer, and the kids don't even know what self-esteem lots of times is. And when they start working in these diary pages at their own pace, whichever ones they want to work on, with or without their parents, depending upon the age, they'll start to have much more awareness of when they're feeling better about themselves and when they're not. And slowly, with the self-esteem little log on the pages, they'll be able to write down the number that reflects how they're feeling that day. And that way they'll start to have a similar type of feeling and ability that biofeedback teaches. And this is all about self-regulation in a way that's not expensive or overwhelming for the kids, and will hopefully give them leverage to have the willingness to change their attitudes about putting their stuff in lockers. Some of the kids I've coached don't keep lockers, and then carry around 50-pound backpacks. I wonder why they're having back problems. Or they'll have a different attitude towards wearing a watch minder, which they can set to remind them to take their medications at different times, and they'll be able to become much more self-appointed and self-empowered slowly, and they'll go, wow, I didn't realize that I was accomplishing all that. And the parents start to feel more connected to the kids also, because most of the time the parents need to be there to help the kids check it off or think of ideas about what they did right that day, rather than hearing all the negatives.
And I think as a parent, it kind of helps you become more aware of some of the things that are more challenging for kids, that have AD or ADHD issues. For example, just when I read that about I got out of bed without the alarm clock going off, and didn't crawl back in bed and go back to sleep. That's one thing my son just did that drove me nuts. He just would never get up. Well, years ago, maybe I wasn't as educated as I am now, which still isn't very much, but in terms of ADHD and knowing that it wasn't so much he was just a problem kid. He was trying to be obnoxious. It was, one of these characteristics that, you can kind of identify. And I think as a parent, if you know that, then you're not going to get so angry because you don't just feel like the kid's fighting you on stuff.
Right. Exactly. There are a lot of typical symptoms that kids have with focusing issues that come with the lack of executive functionings, and the big ones are organization and time management. And if the parents aren't creating structure in the household and they don't know what's expected of them, or very little is expected, or there's inconsistencies in expectations, then they're going to get into ruts that are really self-harming, and around we go. So parents who have ADD, which is very often the case if their kids have it, sometimes will be so scattered, and especially if they're not on medication, that they won't sit down and work on these diary pages with kids. But then you have parents that aren't medicated and want so desperately for their kids to feel better about themselves and to stay focused on one issue at a time by doing the diary pages over and over again until they feel they've got it down pat as part of their life experience that they'll actually sit down with the kid and help them, or do the dishes while the kid's filling out the forms, or saying, "Oh, well, I didn't realize I did this today. I didn't scream at someone. Instead, I just told them that my feelings were hurt," or I jumped up at the first possible chance in class to do a favor for the teacher by running down to the office to get some copies made, or whatever the case may be. So it really is to improve self-awareness, and as I do as a coach, change their attitudes one diary page at a time to focus on the things that they're often ashamed of talking about, like procrastination, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you find nowadays, like I said, it's been a while since my son was this age, and I remember trying to help him create some tools that would help him stay organized and remember things, and trying to get him to write things down in the notebook because he was always forgetting stuff, and trying to get him to use a day planner. And he just hated that because, the other kids weren't using one at that time, and it made him feel different. Do you find you have any issues with that with kids today that you're working with, that they think, why do I have to do this? Other kids aren't having to do this.
No, today it's different from when your son was growing up. Everyone has a planner, and sometimes the planners are on the computers. A lot of classes a lot of schools offer laptops now, and they use Google Calendar on the Internet to keep track of when things are due, and reports and things of that nature. So it's much more accepted now to use planners of different kinds. So, it's as per needed, and it's also what's going to help each kid feel more comfortable. And do they want to use it on the laptop? Are they going to use a hard copy? Or a school planner that some schools provide. And what's going to give them a sense of more self-control. And so that's a good thing. So kids don't particularly feel that different, and there's ways to help them in ways that are very subtle now, so that they don't have to feel so different. And some of them are so desperate to feel better that they'll gladly accept note takers, or to sit up in front of the class, or have different reinforcing type of ways to know when they have to go to the doctor that day, and when they have a football practice and things like that. So they're much more open-minded than they used to be, and schools are much more sensitive in certain ways to impairments of different kinds. Of course, it's not across the board. It's not black and white, but things have really moved along since your son was in school.
Now, do you actually go in schools and say work with students there, and teachers or counselors?
I've been asked to do that. I'm just at the premise of starting to go to schools and lecture on different strategies for success and things like that. I used to help the kids one-on-one, but I don't do that anymore. But I'm available and have been available to give workshops to schools and specialized groups within them, something called special ed PTA groups have hired me to speak to them, and sometimes I do it pro bono. But I'm not called in as a consultant yet. I might get to be once I start doing the lecture circuit in schools, which is just starting to begin now. Before this, I was dedicated for the last 8 years to lecturing in Manhattan at conventions and things to parents and social workers and teachers all as a group.
Yeah, I see this. I used to work in alternative schools quite a bit, and we were always looking for ways to raise kids' self-esteem, and just different programs and things. And I'm thinking, gosh, I remember so many of the kids I worked with that if we'd had a notebook like this, a book that they could write in, this diary method, and with an alternative school, I see this working even if a kid's not maybe diagnosed specifically with ADHD, but if you've got any kind of behavioral issues, just taking the book out and working as a class, going through it and talking about some of these ways that we behave appropriately or, have trouble behaving appropriately, I think could be just really helpful.
Yeah, some selective schools we're just started circulating them to schools. But the publisher and I, certain counselors have been using them in groups as discussions, whether it's the quotes that are sometimes funny that that enhance and incorporate the diary pages. Be careful how you treat a nerd. You may end up working for one, things like that, or whatever the case. And some of these diary pages are used in small classes, and they can be used in big classes too. The teacher can write down the few prompts and inquisitive questions on the board, and then kids can check off the ones that they feel they've accomplished. And so there's a lot of ways to skin the cat with these diary pages. They can be used by psychologists and for their kids that come in as patients, and I know there's one nearby that's doing that, or improvising on them, and things of that nature. So it's effective for teachers, it's effective for parents, and it's also received a wonderful, in another edition, a wonderful foreword from a psychoanalyst who really wants as many parents to work with the teachers as possible, using the homeschool accountability form that's specifically directed to kids with behavioral problems on a daily basis, so that the parents don't have any knee-jerk reactions at parent-teacher conferences, or the teachers don't have to feel like, oh my God, how am I going to tell this parent what's going on? And this way, there's communication between the two. If the teacher will just scan the accountability form and send it to the parent, and this way the parent and the teacher can be working on the same page, so to speak. Sometimes parents will give tokens for good behavior at night. Meanwhile, the teacher's given them a pink slip for during the day. So then you have two different directions going on, and the kid's going to get mixed messages. But if the teacher and the parent work together on the homeschool accountability form, it's going to bridge that gap of communication and help the kid ultimately.
Yeah, that's great. I just think this would be a wonderful workbook for parents to have at home. So again, the name of it is ADHD Success, Solutions for Boosting Self-Esteem, the Diary Method, ages 7 through 12. And so
7 through 17.
7 through 17. Why did I say 12? I'm used to doing that as a author, a children's author, I guess. 8 to 12 is my middle graders.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. So if they go to the site, reachbeyondcapitaladd.com, they can even get some sample diary pages on here, free to read, it says. Tell us about that.
Yeah, on the books and articles page of the website, there's 2 different samples of the diary pages. But and if they buy the book, they can access the PDF files of all the different chapters. So the diary pages is the bulk of the book, but there's also exercises that are not visible on kids being able to answer questions that will help them become more verbal and be more aware of their thoughts, so that they can speak up and say, oh, Mom, you're confusing me. Can you please just give me 1 pair of shoes and Payless shoes at a time to try on instead of 5, or whatever the case may be. There are different one-page chapters on, if my child could really speak their mind, and then it helps the kids check off, oh, this is what I've been thinking, and I didn't know how to say it, like, please don't yell at me as much. Can you give me a hug once in a while? Or, I'm not stupid. I'm just a little slow. Could you please repeat yourself a few times? Or tell me what to expect, Mom, before you rush me off to something that I wasn't expecting to do. So there's a bunch of different exercises in the book, but they're all very simple, and we'll do something that there is no other book written for children to work in. This is the first of its kind. So Russell Barkley, the famous researcher and psychiatrist, sent me a lovely testimony that I framed, and which I showed him at a conference that he gave recently here in Bergen County. and it's gotten a lot of rave reviews. So I'm very grateful, and in some respect, I'm continuing the legacy of Dr. Leopold Belak. And I really enjoy coaching adults and parents and children. It's very rewarding.
Now, how does that work? Do they come to your office, or can you do this over the phone so that you can coach people anywhere, or how do you do that?
Coaching is done on the phone primarily, which makes it a whole separate animal from psychotherapy and psychiatry. It's done on the phone and through email. However, I have 3 clients that are within half an hour to 40 minutes from here, my office, and they come here for coaching sessions. And this way we go through the backpacks and we go over, planners and different ways that I can help them get organized and have more of a manageable time, or a whole family will come if need be, and we'll talk about how ADD is affecting the family and things of that nature. So very often, if it's geographically good, they'll come here. And then the wonderful thing about coaching is they are usually accountable from one session to another in one way or another, to email me or call me and let me know that they're staying on track, which is very helpful to them, whether they're on medications or not. So it works both ways in essence, and I can Skype and do emails also, and coaching can be done that way as well. Someone just called me from Pennsylvania and was asking me some questions about ADD and things of that nature. So there's a different ways to skin the cat with coaching, but most coaches that deal with ADHD do coach not on the phone, but in person. I mean, not in person, but on the phone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's great, because then you people have access to you from anywhere. So anyone listening to this today, if your child you could use some coaching, or your family some coaching, then I assume they can just contact you via your website.
Yeah, they can email me. My email address is on the website, reachbeyondadd@aol.com, and we can do a conference call. The child, the parent, and me to discuss the issues at hand, and if necessary, I can be involved with the teacher. In some cases, psychologists or psychiatrists, and I feel that the patient/client gets much more help when there's more than one person working on that person at the time. It's the same as if you're in a hospital. You don't just get one nurse. You get a multiple of nurses, and you get the doctor in residence much of the time, and then when really necessary, your doctor will come in to the hospital. So it's the same thing with mental health, only it's not as promoted as it is in physical well-being, unfortunately. But one day I'm hoping that will change. And I'm available for 20-minute free consultations on the phone. And the coaching is very hands-on and extremely practical. And more often than not, the father wants to believe nothing's wrong with the kid. It's just their bad behavior, and the mother is running around from one doctor to another. And it's extremely important that I help parents be on the same page, and that all the responsibility not be on the shoulders of the mother at all times. So I try to work on that with people in a gentle, soft way, so the fathers don't have any negative senses from hearing it from a psychiatrist.
Yeah, do you think the fathers feel threatened or something? Is that why they typically react that way?
I really don't know. I think they're just very overwhelmed with their work, and it's hard for them to have to deal with anything else, and they may take it personally. What's wrong with me if my kid's not perfect or something like that, where the mother is more of a caregiver and more understanding and thinks from a different place. But it's the child that will really suffer the most throughout life unless they're given structure in their childhood, and and they're given the reins to make decisions on their own to some extent as they get older, and parents need to find out what kind of parenting skills they have and what they need to do in terms of tweaking. And that parent evaluation on the back is very much something that parents enjoy filling out and working on, and breaking that barrier of communication between the husband and the wife that so often I find exists.
Gosh, yeah. Well, you also have a newsletter on the site, and I would encourage people just to go to reachbeyondadd.com and click on the top right of the page. You'll see you have a blog, a members area, and a newsletter, and then get your free newsletter. And I would think that could give them some great information over time, that if they're just kind of thinking of coaching, or they're thinking of buying your book, or thinking of maybe attending a lecture or a workshop or something you're doing, that the newsletter would help them kind of get a little more familiar with you and the kind of things you do, and give them just some more information about this ADHD in the workbook. So if people want to buy the workbook, I call it a workbook, but it's more of a diary, I guess, but it is kind of a workbook.
It's 166 pages of 8.5 by 11. It's a workbook because it includes different exercises.
Now you mentioned a moment ago that there are certain pages that maybe the child wants to work on over and over and over. So how do they do that? Do you suggest you print out extra pages of the workbook, or what?
But let me answer your first question. That as far as purchasing, they can purchase it on my website, or they can go to Barnes & Noble's website. Either way. And if it's a school, they can go to Ingram Book, www.ingrambook.com. And so there's 3 different ways to purchase the book, and whichever is easiest for the person to do that. It's so anyhow.
Yeah, so they don't have to look in a local bookstore. They can order it today just by going online.
Right.
So if this is something you think your child would benefit from really quickly, then just order it today. Don't wait, because you can have it in a matter of days, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And I see here, too, on your site that for referrals, if you refer a client to Kerin and she coaches them for at least 2 months, then you'll get a free copy of the book, too. So maybe you don't.
Yeah, that was that was something that was running, but that should be taken off the website because that's no longer. But that could happen again. And from time to time, I do offer freebies like that. So I'll have to have that removed. But if there is a school that's interested, they can definitely email me any questions they have about the book. And if it's local in New Jersey, I'd like to go there and discuss it with them and discuss how they would use the book and things like that.
Yeah. And you've also got some things. You've got other radio interviews and things on your site, too, that people can get quite a bit of information just from your site. So
yeah, I've been on the radio a lot, internet radio blogs and things of that nature, and on a TV, and on a TV, a little part there too at one point, TV show. So yeah, it's gotten around quite a bit, and it's being reviewed right now in different countries to see about translation, and so that's pretty exciting too.
Yeah, and I see it's won the Young Voices Foundation 2010 Gold Award in the Parenting, Child Care, Family category, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are almost out of time, so just maybe you can tell us, other than buying the book, is there one tip you'd like to give parents, counselors, teachers in terms of, getting information or helping children, or even other writers who maybe think that, they have something that could really help people? What's the best tip maybe for writers to help like this?
That's a broad-based question. I'm not sure how to narrow it down.
Well, you have any kind of tip you'd like to share with the listeners today?
Well, don't give up. You know, there's a saying, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle.
Yeah, I saw that quote in here. I love that. I was going to copy that for something because I thought that's just great. I hadn't heard that one before, but I love that quote.
Kids with impairments may be very delayed emotionally and in terms of finding their niche. But when it happens, you know, you'll watch that sunflower really sprout. I mean, look at Michael Phelps. He wasn't old when he became you know, an Olympian swimmer, but, you know, based on what his mother said, you know, all bets were down and off. And she pushed him and got him involved in swimming, and then, you know, the rest is history. And Einstein took forever to develop, and people can take a very long time to mature. And if they're 20 years old and they have ADD, the chances are they're more like a 16-year-old. So, yes, it's going to be a frustrating road to be a parent of a child with behavioral issues, but the rewards can be reaped that are much greater than if they're just average. And it's the job of every parent and teacher to nurture the seed within them to help them develop to their full potential. And in today's pace, it's very hard to get people to read and sit down with their kids. It's very hard to get kids off the technical mechanisms that we have today and equipment. But in order to really develop, you still need to go back to the basics. And back to the basics is breathing, taking time out to be consistent in terms of the messages you give your kids, creating structure and being consistent with it and not giving up no matter what.
That's great. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. And thanks so much for all the wonderful stuff in this great book. This is just a wonderful gift to the world. ADHD Success, Solutions for Boosting Self-Esteem, the Diary Method. And you can get it at www.reachbeyondadd.com. So thanks so much,
And there's
Kerin.
some wonderful pictures for the younger kids to enhance the prompts. Kids stealing and kids overwhelmed with 5,000 books for homework, and that some of them are funny pictures. And there's a poem to the children that I wrote, because I write poetry, and there's a poem to the parents.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing
Thank you very much.
You. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.